it's a start. Those environmentalists told Douglas Herbert. What are your thoughts on what you heard from the German Chancellor?
Did you say start? Well, I think we started a long time back, and I think these kind of words we have been hearing for a long time now. And I think Angela Merkel, maybe she's very serious, and it's good that she has put it on top of the agenda. But I think what was expected from her, and all the environmental lobbies and many other agencies are looking at, is not just saying that we should reduce by 40 to 70% by 2050 to limit the temperature to 2 degrees centigrade, temperature rise to 2 degrees centigrade, but how we are going to do that. And I think nobody is clear about it. I mean, look, last year, last year, everybody decided that each country will tell what are their intended nationally determined contributions for the reduction of emissions. And based on whatever the people have submitted up till now, 31st March was the last date, we still are nowhere near those kind of reductions. And the gap between what is needed and what is submitted to the United Nations UNFCCC Secretariat is there is a gap of more than about 10 gigatons of equivalent of carbon dioxide per year.
So what you're saying is we haven't gotten the necessary pledges. We're not even talking about the money, because you heard Douglas Herbert talk about the that need for a climate, basically a climate fund of $100 billion a year. We're far from that. You're still waiting on the pledges.
Well, we are waiting for the adequate pledges. Pledges have been submitted. I mean, $100 billion by 2020. See, the pledge was from 2009 to 2012, $10 billion per year. And from 2012 to 2020, it will keep on rising to the $100 billion per year. Now, at present, this Green Climate Fund is nowhere near that. In the whole cumulative Green Climate Fund, it's just about $10 billion US dollars.
And on that point, we saw, you remember a decade ago, there was these Millennium Goals set out by Tony Blair. There were lots of pledges, and in the end, countries didn't really cough up the money.
That's right.
In this case, what do you do?
Well, I think if you look at it, $100 billion per year, considering the GDPs and considering the expenditure which is being done elsewhere by the developed country, is not at all much. It's a minuscule. For example, the fossil fuel subsidies from the developed countries run into trillions of dollars. The latest report is $5.3 trillion. Now, let's say that was a global figure. But let's say developed country probably figure will be much less than that. But considering that, $100 billion is not much. I mean, Lord Stern has gone on the record that total action, the total cost of the action required against the climate change is not more than 1% of the GDP. 1% of the GDP? Your subsidies are 6% of the GDP today. The fossil fuel subsidies I'm talking about. So 1% of the GDP towards this climate change is nothing. It's within our reach. I think we need a political will to put a roadmap, not to just give pledges.
All right, but it is on the agenda. How does it bode for that end-of-year climate change summit that will be hosted here in Paris?
Oh, well, it's a big question. I think the government of France, President Hollande and Ségolène Royal are doing their best, going around the world and putting down what are the things which needed. But we don't have a roadmap yet. How to do it? I mean, for example, we still have the coal plants running in Europe. I mean, if you see the carbon dioxide emissions from the coal plants from Europe, is 2 times that of whole Africa. And maybe 10 times more than the whole of least developed countries. So how to reduce that and how to promote the renewable energy is not yet well known. I think Ségolène Royal did an excellent effort in energy transition bill. And she probably tried to put the roadmap properly.
The French finance minister, environment minister, excuse me.
That's right.
There was last week news here in France, the atomic power giant Areva rocked because of huge problems when it comes to its self-financing and to the financing of closing down aging nuclear power plants. When we see that in neighboring Germany, more and more there are coal plants being fired up, what is the way to go? How do you find realistically ways to provide energy for this planet without reverting to something that's either dirty or dangerous?
Well, I think the energy transition bill of Ségolène Royal provides those answers. I mean, she's talking about closing down the nuclear plants by 50% by certain years. And she definitely aims of filling that gap by closing down the nuclear plant by the renewable energy. I think the energy efficiency and renewable energy are in the forefront. That's number one. And number two is, in the transport sector, we need to have technology innovations in terms of the electrical cars, the fuel cell cars. And I think those are the kind of things which are needed. And they are happening. They need to be promoted, incentivized, and put in a forefront and on top of the agenda.
Now, the last time there was a major climate change conference was 2009. It didn't end well. But what has changed since then is we've seen a bilateral, if not a binding deal, at least pledges between the United States and China, the two biggest polluters. Are you more upbeat when it comes to the prospects for Paris?
Personally, I'm not very upbeat. I think you asked a good question about what is the difference between 2009 Copenhagen and now in Paris. I think there was a lot of hype in 2009, and we are going to see a lot of hype this time as well. But I think there is a need to have a very concrete plans and not just pledges. Because the pledges are being taken very lightly by all the countries. They're very informal, including G7 summit. I'm sure the communique will say that we will limit the temperature to 2 degrees centigrade and have a major reduction.
So whose job is it to play bad cop then and to make sure that those pledges are enforced? Is it the UN? Is it the G7? Who should be the one who says, hey, governments, stick by what you promise?
I think it has to come from within. I don't think United Nations can force anyone. United Nations is what the countries are. They cannot go beyond that. I think it should come. We need a climate leadership. And some of the G7 leaders can provide it. It may not be all. Because some of them are not really serious. I mean, for example, USA is not even a party to the Kyoto Protocol. Though now they want to take a leading role, which is a good one. Canada has just exited from the Kyoto Protocol. And Japan is somewhere in between. They are not very serious about it. I think that 2020, when the new protocol will come into being, till 2020, a lot need to be achieved. And if at all the world succeeds in doing it through the climate leaderships, through the finances, and through inclusion of China, India, and some of the other countries, then probably we will be somewhere near to it.
All right, but we're not there. We're not there yet. You're saying is that listening to you, it sounds like it's not going to happen before December.
That's true. That's true. And even after December, I have my own doubts whether we will be having a good legally binding agreement. We will have an agreement. We will have a lot of pledges coming up. But I'm not sure whether there will be legally binding agreement because it will be tied up with the financially binding agreements. I mean, we have to shell out, the developed countries have to shell out that much money in order to get the developing countries legally binded on that.